All right, here's Bobby Slowik. Look, Bobby Slowik, interviewed by the Panthers, interviewed by the Titans. Frankly, if Bobby Slowik goes to coach for the Panthers, he's not the man I thought he was. I think he'll leave if he finds the right situation. That Panthers interview, I can only imagine, went something like this. Dave Tepper says, how do you feel about being undermined and meddled with? Are you cool with it? How about if I just like pull the rug out from you and I meet with you weekly, to the point where the former coach, Frank Reich, said that they're very uncomfortable weekly meetings with the coach. He pulled himself off of play calling duties and then put himself back in. No, I don't think he's going to Carolina. He might be intrigued by the possibility of coaching Bryce Young and seeing what he could do with him. The Titans, I do not think are as dysfunctional as they've been sold. I think they've had the normal amount of dysfunction that an NFL team has. And whatever the rift was between ownership, GM, and Mike Vrabel, that's easily remedied if they find the right GM and head coach. So Rand Carthon's the GM there. He spent time with Bobby Slowik in San Francisco, and presumably he'll, because he's interviewing Bobby Slowik, they probably see eye to eye already to a certain degree, but they'll interview. I don't think either of those two teams, though, without having like a definite answer or solution at quarterback, depending on how you feel about Bryce Young, I don't think those are going to be the ones that entice Bobby Slowik away. And you've already got looks like another couple other situations are starting to gel. So the timing, especially if the Texans pull this victory off tomorrow, maybe the timing just isn't right for Bobby Slowik this year. But to kind of revisit exactly how it all went this week, this is just a couple days ago. Bobby Slowik asked about his potential interview requests and where he stood with it 2 days ago.
I'm entirely locked in on the Ravens.
Let me back that up a little bit.
I couldn't tell you what's going on. I'm entirely locked in on the Ravens. I know coming up here pretty soon, that process is going to start pretty quick, but I'm going to cross that bridge when I get to it. Right now, I'm just Baltimore. No interviews. That's correct.
So we didn't know anything, and now all of a sudden, a couple days later, 2 or 3 days later, he is interviewed with a couple of teams via Zoom. I'm not too bent out of shape about that or anything. I think it's very possible that, yesterday, Thursday, was like a Friday in your normal schedule because this game has moved up 1 week. And he may have just told his agent, like, listen, I'm more than willing to talk to teams. We'll do it on Friday or Saturday, well, Thursday or Friday if we have the time. And maybe that's what they did. So I'm not worried about Zoom interviews. That doesn't take it doesn't take up so much time out of the day that they're going to screw up their game planning or anything for Baltimore. That hay is already in the barn. As far as the interview is actually happening, yeah, I get a little bit. I start to get a little bit nervous about it. Like, it's a good team we have with those two, and I don't want to break it up. I think CJ will be fine with multiple different offensive coordinators, but in this really seminal period in his career, I'd like him to have that consistency. This is Bobby talking about CJ and how he responds to big games.
He's progressed and built through the year. A great rapport with the coaching staff, with the offensive players, with the team, and he's very confident, and I think that shows every time he steps on the field. And it was no different against Indianapolis, which was really a playoff game for us, and it was no different last Saturday. And I would expect that to continue no matter where we play. He's proven big games don't faze him. I wonder if his heart rate drops. He's a special individual in that way. It's been really fun to be a part of.
Yeah, and I think CJ, obviously has all those quarterback traits, but you just never know until they get into these situations in the NFL exactly how they're going to respond. He had already responded in college in big moments, most recently against Georgia in the Peach Bowl. But there's just zero concern I have about the moment being too big for him or anything. And part of that too is how well he and Bobby Slowik in this system have merged, where this system, guys have answers. As long as you run the system and as long as you do things the right way, theoretically, you're not going to see something on a given play where there isn't an answer. Now, sometimes it's just unrealistic and you're not going to get to it. But over time, if guys actually just really work their asses off at it, this is why so many otherwise maybe mediocre quarterbacks have gone to Pro Bowls playing in this Kubiak Shanahan system. the really cool thing is always you wonder, all right, if it could do this for Schaub, and this is an amped up version of what Kubiak ran, what does it do for a genuinely gifted quarterback? That's what Kyle Shanahan was teasing himself with various different quarterbacks over the last couple of years, but Garoppolo especially, I think. And like with CJ, it might be one of those magical mixtures of both that actual talent plus this scheme.
CJ is the ultimate preparer. He's not a rookie in that regard. He's a rookie in that every lesson he learns, he really tries hard to bank. Like he puts a lot into making a mistake and making sure he doesn't make the same mistake twice. But he prepares like a vet. He prepares like someone who's been in the league 6, 7, 8 years, and that speeds up all our conversations. Like I feel like I'm talking to another coach. So our back and forth are usually pretty quick. He understands what I'm saying. I understand what he's saying. We understand how to communicate quickly. And if we want to make an adjustment and kind of find a middle ground, sometimes we'll find a middle ground. That part really just took time. And the more we grew in our rapport, similar to the rest of the offense with CJ, it just became tighter and clearer what we wanted to do.
Okay, so this part of it, if we're looking at this through the filter of, okay, will Bobby Slowik leave and or how do owners feel about it, about Bobby Slowik, like that answer in an interview is going to go over really well. Like he just paints a picture of Bobby Slowik, who, by the way, was kind of advertised in coming here as maybe kind of like a nerdy pro football focused type of guy. He's been nothing but engaging and personable and interesting, and he gives long, thoughtful answers. I download these coordinator interviews every week, and there's always there's like way more megabytes in a Bobby Slowik interview than in a Matt Burke or a Frank Ross interview. And Frank Ross can talk, damn it, but he gives those really thoughtful answers. I think that's going to be appealing, but also just his ability to work with CJ. And I wonder how much in his training as a head coach, he might be thinking to himself, all right, like there's emotional reasons to want to see this through, but also just like, how far can I take it with CJ Stroud? Like I want to be sure that if I'm working with this young quarterback who's this gifted and I'm learning how to help teach him and like how to communicate with him, like how many more lessons can I learn in spending an extra year with him? That's what I'm telling Bobby if I'm trying to convince him to stay here. And John Crumpler, who writes about the Texans, he's also a medical student, so real underachiever, this guy. I just wanted to put this up here because I think he gave a good synopsis of why people think Bobby Slowik is a good candidate, and what's been good about his offense. I'll just run through these really quick and tell you whether I agree with them or not. Incredibly intentional offense. Let me get this out of here. I can't. There we go. Incredibly intentional offense in every sense of the word. Starts with a running game and keeping quarterback under centers, nullifies pressure and opens up play action shots. So those first three sentences, yeah, the intentional offense, I think this is one thing that's very common amongst Kyle Shanahan offenses and acolytes is that you don't put a play in unless there's a reason for that play to be in. There's no just one-offs other than their gadget plays. Well, no, even with their gadget plays, there shouldn't be a one-off play that's in there that isn't somehow tied or set up by other plays. So everything you're doing is, even if it doesn't work out, it sets up misdirection for another play. And we really saw that versus that Browns defense, that very, very good Browns defense last week. The misdirection really kicked into hyperdrive. And a lot of that is set up with the frustrating plays that don't work. At the very least, when they don't work, they're setting up that misdirection. So that's compared to like, frankly, I'm not piling on Bill O'Brien, but Bill O'Brien's offense has sometimes felt somewhat disconnected. Felt like you were throwing darts at a wall, just trying to see what was going to work. Condensed formations and motion to open up the whole field and try to get defensive tells. Yes, we saw that work really well with Nico Collins last week. The pre-snap motion has just been way more advanced than anything we saw before. Blocking schemes are very deliberate to buy time for routes, and he frequently neutralizes opposing elite pass rushers. That's a huge one, because when we go to this week with Beaks and the other guys, this Ravens pass rush has a multitude of guys. There's not necessarily one guy that you say like, okay, well, take care of this defensive tackle, take care of Jadeveon Clowney. They've all got sacks. They've spread them across the board. So throwing fullbacks, tight ends, and running backs into the equation and just having extra bodies it serves two purposes. One, is that you're trying to run out of those formations. Two, you're setting up the play action, and in doing so, are also having extra bodies to block those guys. And the play action slows down the pass rush a little bit too. Let's see, one more about them. Made every skill player on the team better and played guys to their best roles, from Nico, Tank, Schultz, Singletary, Brevin, etc. Yeah, like I'm a fan of Bobby Slowik, and I wasn't always beforehand. Bobby this week on what it was like that first week in Baltimore.
We kind of used it a little bit on offense as a little bit of a rallying cry. Like, we couldn't get out of our own way in that game. We couldn't even really get the ball down and set to snap it to even feel like we played, and that starts with me, and it starts with coaches. When you stack drives together, they extend drives long enough. Like, it's hard to get chunks, so they extend drives long enough where eventually they force you, to try to make a throw into a tight area. And they got guys that are fast, rangy, big. I mean, all of it, and they can all make plays on the ball. They all consistently make plays on the ball.
Yeah. The first week, the biggest thing that the Texans screwed up, and Bobby has talked about this, is just they tried to do too much. He called it the 500 level courses when he should have been at the 101 level courses. And that's the one thing that still disappoints me in terms of what D'Amico did right and wrong in his rookie year as a head coach. Because he did a whole lot right, obviously. They win that many more games this year. But as a head coach, even though he's the de facto defensive coordinator, he's got to have oversight over things. And one of the classic things that rookie coordinators do wrong is they try to do too much too soon. And I felt like D'Amico should have seen that coming. And maybe he did. Maybe he worked with him and tried to keep him from doing too much. Or maybe he just felt like, maybe it's felt like, okay, I'll see what Bobby can do and he'll learn if he can't do it. And because he's very patient in that way. And they learned very quickly, okay, we're trying to do too much here with a rookie quarterback, with 4 backup offensive linemen, with receivers who have never been in this scheme before. They were trying to be like the present day 49ers. And you can't do that. You have to build up to it. And that's another thing that's going to be good in interviews. My hope is just honestly, with all the stuff that Bobby said about CJ there, that he looks at it and figures, all right, realistically, no matter what the offers are this year, I need to be a little bit more groomed as a head coach. And I wonder maybe if he looks at some of the guys out of the Shanahan tree that have gotten the job after just 1 or 2 years as a coordinator. A lot of them 1 year. I want to say LaFleur. I want to say LaFleur was a coordinator twice for 1 year each, but he's only the play caller for 1 year. I mean, Mike McDaniel, he was Kyle Shanahan's offensive coordinator. Is that actually an offensive coordinator? No. So, like a lot of those guys have done it with even less experience than Bobby Slowik. I wonder if he looks at those guys and is thinks that, okay, they were just fine, or maybe they could have used a little bit more seasoning. And I'll delusionally think that it's the latter until further notice.